I'm Mihai Adamescu from Bucharest University. I'm from the Research Center in Systems Ecology and Sustainability of the Bucharest University. And yeah, it's a great pleasure for me to be here at this meeting. And I have to say that I'm very sorry, like my predecessors, that I'm not in the room. But I'm very glad to say a few words about ecosystem services and wetland restoration and what sort of thinking we need in order to change what we are doing now. We are implementing actually a project named Restore for Life. The project is actually doing, let's say, a planning how to move forward with the restoration of wetland complexes as life-supporting systems in the Danube Basin. And we have many Hungarian partners, which I'm glad for in the project. So how can you use ecosystem services as a tool for wetland restoration? First of all, I think ecosystem services are useful to understand why actually we need wetland restoration. First of all, because ecosystem services are something that are provided through from the nature to the people, to the society itself. And so I think that is it's something that there is always usually there is a conflict between, for example, other uses of ecosystems, like, for example, productive capacity, and the natural systems. So, for example, the wetlands. Usually people are tending to simplify systems in such a way that they provide more provisioning services and not the other type of ecosystem services, like, for example, regulation or support system or support ecosystem services, or, for example, cultural ecosystem services. So we have this tendency to simplify the systems in such a way that they will provide more food, for example. Then we will discuss a little bit about conceptualization of the wetland ecosystem services. And of course, we want to point out the multiple use of wetlands. So instead of having only one ecosystem service that is used by humans, we are actually pointing out the fact that wetlands are multiple ecosystem service providers. So they are providing not only productive capacity, harvest by many, not by the landowner, but by many that are around the wetlands, but also other type of ecosystem services, like I said, cultural ecosystem services, or supporting and regulating, like, for example, carbon sequestration or nutrient retention, depends on the type of systems. I think one of the biggest aspects of ecosystem services and then on wetland restoration, I think it's to understand the huge role of stakeholders, because usually people are discussing wetlands or peatland or whatever type of natural ecosystems only by looking at several specific areas of interest based on usually the background of each of the stakeholders. So, for example, I'm not necessarily looking at wetlands only from the regulation or the conservation needs, but also from other points of view. But that is only because I had long discussions with many type of stakeholders, and now I can understand different positions that everybody has, from water management to agriculture to the conservationists and to others that are pointing out different multiple use of wetlands. Then the last part, it's actually dealing with the need for transformative change, and I will go back to that. Hopefully, okay, yes. So why we need wetland restoration, actually? I think wetland restoration is just a recognition of the fact that we destroyed wetland. So over many hundreds of years, we have been so thoroughly destroying the wetlands, and we did that with accelerating rate over the centuries. So we we were so good at that that in this moment we have just 4.5% of the EU terrestrial areas as a wetland. So, and I have to say that the surface was much bigger in the past. And many of these, as based on the habitat condition reported under Article 17, many of these are in unfavorable status of conservation. And even more, 51% are further deteriorating. So we are not in a good shape, but we are still deteriorating the wetlands. And of course, we are decreasing the ecosystem services that the wetlands are providing. Then we have a lot of evidence from meta-analysis, like you saw already from different other speakers ahead. In front of me. For example, different papers are addressing the restoration impact on ecosystem services. And the meta-analysis actually showed that the restoration is actually enhancing the ecosystem services supply in degraded wetlands. But actually, it's much easier to recover biodiversity than ecosystem services. And this is obviously especially due to the fact that when we are discussing about ecosystem services, we are discussing more about the processes that lay behind, let's say, the biodiversity, the species diversity in itself. And for sure, as you could also saw, you need a lot of time to see if a restoration activity is a successful one, and to see also the full recovery of biodiversity and ecosystem services in certain areas. So I think that is very, if you, I mean, if somebody expects that after a restoration activity, the things will improve tremendously in just 1 or 2 years, then it's, or even longer, then it's I think it's a big mistake. And of course, we don't need restoration if we do a good conservation of the areas. And of course, just to point out, they are just to point out that the ecosystem services are supplied by wetlands in abundant quantities, let's say, and qualities. And of course, you can see, for example, that different different wetlands are providing, supporting, provisioning, regulating, and cultural ecosystem services. And this is actually what is important as life supporting units. So they are not providing only food, which is essential for humans, but also they are supporting they are providing other type of ecosystem services that are supporting ourselves as life. Yeah, itself. Then to discuss a little bit about the need for the stakeholders, and I think this is central. It's a central aspect of restoration. We discussed about the antagony between development and the need for conservation, and actually this is wrong. We are not discussing about this. We are discussing about the biodiversity as the base, the foundation on which we are developing ourselves. So this is something that we, if we understand this as a society, we can move forward. If not, we will have all the time this fragmentation, this rupture between understanding, and of course, many conflicts appear just because of that. And one of the conflicts that I know and I'm very much aware of is the conflict between agriculture and wetlands. And wetland restoration, for example, in which nobody wants to give a piece of a land because it takes from the own property, let's say, or from the food, for example. And we do not understand that without wetlands, you have a bigger problem with for example, climate change. You have a bigger problem with the supply of other ecosystem services, like, for example, other type of foods, for example, fish. Yeah, and so involving stakeholders, it's one of the most important aspects of wetland restoration. And I think we need to understand the complexity of the interaction among different stakeholders. You have different uses of wetlands, and in the like I said, in a happy case, the wetland is not even there, yeah, because you have a land cover changes. So you destroy everything and you have agriculture there. And to be clear, Europe will not achieve its 2030 goals. Actually, that's why it's a goal, because for sure we will not reach that. But we need, if we want at least to go to that, we need urgent action during the next years to address the alarming rate of biodiversity loss, including wetland loss. And also other types of impacts, like, for example, climate change and overconsumption of natural areas. And for that, we need a transformative change. So we need to change how we are thinking about conservation and about wetland and peatland, for example, restoration and conservation. And for that, we need to build a community of practice that will be able to understand what is an ecosystem, what are the ecosystem services, and why we need the ecosystem services, and why we need to do this kind of conservation, and to understand actually the role of ecosystem services. And the community of practice is actually something that will understand not only what are the ecosystem services, but they will understand what sort of knowledge we want to share, because usually we are talking only about the scientific knowledge, but actually in many areas like wetlands, you have also other type of knowledge, like, for example, traditional knowledge that is so important, and we are all the time forgetting about this type of knowledge that actually is needed. And of course, you need to do this kind of capacity building, networking. You need to think locally, because you will not be able, we will not be able to solve. There is no universal solution. You need to think for specific areas with specific stakeholders, for the specific things that they have in that area, for example, involving business community in restoring wetlands, and of course, in addressing the problems of that community is something that we need to think. So we need to run for long term. This is something that we need to understand. And of course, we need to think sustainability. You cannot restore something and then in 2 years it will be the same, because we did not take into account, for example, the fact that around the wetland you have a forestry that is planted just to do the kind of the pumping water out. So these kind of things you have to take into account. And of course, we need to address this transdisciplinary approach that I think it's very important in wetland management, and to include also other things like different communities, like, for example, scientists, policymakers, local people, community members, and from different sectors. Of course, we need to define the purpose, and we said that in the project, for example, we know what we want to do, but we also know what we don't know. And I think we don't know a lot, and we are eager to learn from different type of communities, and from different, not only from scientific communities, but also from others, and to be able to build something that stands for a longer time. And for that, you need a community of practice. You need to bring everybody together. I know that it sounds very, I don't know, very I don't know how to call it, but we want actually to have this co-development, co-design, and co-participation. So we need actually to work together with the stakeholders. And these are not just words. For sure, I can assure you that we are doing that in certain areas, as like demonstration cases, in which we are trying to understand what the local communities want and how they want to do this. And of course, we also identify the leverage points. And I think identifying the leverage points, the points in which you can intervene in the system and change how the system is behaving, I think is something that is very old in the same time, but very new in the same time. So I think it's good. So we need transformative change. And how you do this? This is actually, you need to rethink how the system is organized. So transformative change is thinking in systems, thinking that you need a radical change in how we are addressing the problems. We need to think that we need fundamental transformation, and we need to think that we need paradigm shift and new narratives. is not only about optimization. So I will do this small change here and this small change there and this small, and think will be better. No, we need to think in a new way, that will allow communities to be involved in what they are, what we are defining and what we are thinking of. Yeah, and I think this is important. And the second is why we need transformative change is the fact that actually everything, if you look here, everything is changing, let's say, at an exponential rate, and we cannot do this forever and ever. So we need natural systems in order to support our landing. After this huge increase of everything, urban population, primary energy use, whatever we need something to land on. How you do this? This is another thing, because in this moment we are increasing like this. We are approaching this type of we see that there is a limit to our growth, let's say. And it's possible that it's as a society we face this part, and we have to be able to understand that we need wetlands, we need ecosystem services that will provide these kind of things without energy for us, without energy costs. And we need to understand that we need a lot of other knowledge to make this transition. So like I said, Europe will not achieve these goals without changing this type of thinking, and without understanding that small regular policy will not solve the problems that we are facing. And we need to think that not at the higher level they will do the policy, they will just make the framework, but the real thing, the real change has to be at the local communities where we want to change things. I will jump over this one just to understand the ecosystem services is not something new. It's an old concept. And in this moment, we are discussing about the economics of biodiversity as a transformative change, as transformative. Like I said, system thinking, we are thinking in systems. We are not thinking soil, water, air. We are thinking that these are systems that are interacting. And so when we want to change something, we want to understand the complexity of things. So think in landscape. And the changes should be done at the landscape level, not and of course societal changes. These are the different types of leverage points in which you have different orders of you have incremental change, transitional change, and also transformational change. And a small change in the lower part of this iceberg, it will go and flip the iceberg around. That we want to do. That's the thinking that we want to do, to change the way we are thinking in order to do this kind of thing. Back to the Restore for Life project. Actually, what we want is to develop something that is valid for the Danube Basin in terms of wetland restoration as a support decision system. And we want to be able to have this large-scale holistic wetland restoration. That means to develop this extensive dialogue and co-creation with multiple actors, and to be able to try to reach this restore our ocean and waters by 2030. For that, we have a very complex, let's say, different work packages that are working together. And at the core of our program is the stakeholder engagement, knowledge transfer, training, and co-creation part. That I think it's very it will be very good if we obtain it, if we attend it. Of course, we have the second part with the testing and validation, and the final aim is actually that we want to deliver an innovative wetland restoration, long-lasting service. So we want to be able to have a platform in which you will find solutions on how to deal with different wetland restoration in different parts of the Danube Basin, based on experiences coming up from Hungary, from Romania, from Slovakia, from different countries in the Danube Basin. So this is what we have in mind. And of course, this is something that will take time, nevertheless. We have a newsletter if you want to keep close to the things that we are doing in the project. And of course, we have this open call for new projects because it's a cascade program. So we are giving, I think, 500,000 euros to new projects outside of the project area. And I think in May, 29 May, it's a deadline date to submit new projects for these things. You will find many other things on the webpage of the project. These are the countries that can apply. As you can see, the Danube Basin, it's not part of the countries that can apply because we are already part of the project. But other associated region can apply. And so, yeah, we are giving money to France, for example, and to to Italy and to Sweden. So, yeah. So thank you very much. And if you have questions, I will be very glad to take them. Thank you.